In the quiet parts of Montana, where old hopes sit forgotten like dusty tumbleweeds, sometimes the strangest buys can change your whole life. Sadie Mae Carver never thought that picking a worn-out cowboy at Willer's work for shelter sale would flip her world upside down. She was just a widow, expecting a baby, trying to save her falling-apart ranch, ready to bet her last few bucks on anyone who could fix fences and patch up what time had broken. Colt Avery looked like a guy with troubles, another wanderer with sad eyes and rough hands from a tough past. But deep down, he had a heart waiting for something worth caring about. As fall turned the valley golden and her baby's due date got closer, Sadie learned that sometimes prayers get answered in the oddest ways. But could the secrets they both held ruin their small shot at happiness before love could grow? Before we dive back in, tell us where you're listening from. And if this story grabs you, hit that subscribe button because I've got something super cool for you tomorrow. The morning mist hugged the hills of Willeridge Valley like a soft hug, making the dry, cracked ground and old fence posts look gentler. Sadie Mae Carver stood on the big porch of her late husband's ranch house, one hand on her sore back, the other resting on her big belly where her baby wiggled in the early light. 7 months pregnant, she felt every bit of those months and how her body had changed, getting ready for a future she never planned to face alone. The old rocking chair behind her squeaked in the breeze, a sound that felt cozy but also sad. Thomas, her husband, had made that chair from Montana pine during their first winter together. His big hands shaped the wood with the same care he used when he taught her to ride horses, brand cows, or see the land like someone born to it. Now the chair sat empty, a reminder of dreams cut short and promises left undone. She shifted, feeling the baby kick her ribs, and looked out over the land that had been in the Carver family for 3 generations. The main house, with its chipped paint and droopy shutters, stood like a tired guard watching over acres of messy pasture. Fences that used to stand tall now sagged between rotting posts, leaving gaps where cows could wander, if she still had any cows to worry about. The barn's red paint had faded to a dark, rusty color, and half its roof tiles were scattered in the tall grass, broken by last spring's hailstorm she couldn't afford to fix. Thomas had been gone 8 months, taken by a sudden heart attack while fixing a water pump by the creek. 8 months of trying to hold together what 3 generations of Carver men had built with their hands and grit. 8 months of watching bill collectors circle like hawks, each visit bringing more papers, more deadlines, more threats to take the only home she'd ever known. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and Sadie put both hands on her belly, talking in the soft voice she used when the baby got antsy. "I know, little one, it's getting tight in there, huh?" "Won't be long now," the town doctor said early October, giving her maybe 6 weeks to figure out how a woman alone with a newborn could manage a 1,000-acre ranch that was already falling apart under her care. Behind her, the screen door creaked, and Martha Henley's cheerful voice rang out, full of the stubborn positivity only a lifelong friend could muster. "Sadie Mae, get back in here and eat your breakfast. That baby needs food, and standing out there worrying won't help anybody." Martha was Thomas's aunt, though only 10 years older than Sadie, being the youngest Carver sibling by a lot. She'd moved in the day after Thomas's funeral without being asked, showing up with suitcases and a casserole that fed them for 3 days. That was 8 months ago, and Martha hadn't left, which Sadie was super thankful for. "I'm coming," Sadie called, taking one last look at the valley stretching out like a golden painting. Somewhere out there, past the hills where the mist was starting to clear, was the town of Willow Ridge and the weekly work for shelter sale, her last hope to save the ranch. Inside, the kitchen smelled like the biscuits Martha baked an hour ago, now cooling next to a jar of blackberry jam she'd made from wild berries by the creek. The kitchen was the heart of the house, with smooth wooden floors worn by years of boots and cabinets built by Thomas's grandpa from local wood. Sunlight poured through big windows overlooking the vegetable garden, lighting up tiny dust specks floating in the warm air. Martha stood at the stove, her gray hair tied back in a practical bun, her apron around a waist that had thickened with age but still moved fast, like someone used to taking care of others. She turned as Sadie walked in, her blue eyes sharp with worry for someone fighting tough odds. "Sit," Martha said, pointing to the chair at the head of the table where Thomas used to sit, with a view of the front yard and pasture. "And don't tell me you're not hungry. That baby needs protein and you need strength for what's coming." Sadie sat carefully, taking the plate of eggs and bacon Martha set down. The food was perfect as always, but Sadie had no appetite. It tasted like nothing. Still, she ate a bite, knowing Martha would watch until the plate was clean. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," Martha started, sitting with a cold coffee cup she'd been too busy to drink. "About the auction?" The word felt heavy, like admitting defeat. Every Saturday, the town held a work-for-shelter sale where desperate folks offered their work for a place to stay and food to eat. Mostly men, but sometimes women, all with tired, hollow eyes from running out of options. "I know what you're thinking," Sadie said, poking at her eggs. "It's nuts for a pregnant lady to hire a stranger, especially one desperate enough to sell himself for a bed and meals." Martha's weathered hands gripped her cup, and she looked at Sadie with the sharp judgment of someone who'd seen people make smart and dumb choices for 60 years. "I think you're too proud to ask for help when you need it most. But I also think you're smart enough to know the difference between a smart risk and a crazy one." "The bank gave me until October's end," Sadie said quietly, like it was a prayer or a curse. "If I don't pay, they'll take the ranch. I owe $18,000, Martha. I don't even have $18. The silence was heavy, like math that wouldn't add up. Martha had sold her own small house in town to help with funeral costs and some debts, but it was like pouring water into a bucket with a hole. The money vanished into late fees, penalties, and interest from Thomas's final illness, when medical bills came first. "How much can you pay someone?" Martha asked, always looking for answers instead of problems. Sadie set down her fork and leaned back, one hand on her belly where the baby had calmed down. "I've got maybe $300 in the bank. The pantry's stocked to last through winter if we're careful. And there's the house and barn for shelter. It's not much, but it's something. It's more than some of those men have seen in months." Martha said, "If you find the right guy, someone who knows ranch work, you might fix this place up enough to sell it. Even if you can't keep it, you could walk away with something instead of nothing." The idea of selling the ranch hurt like a knife in Sadie's chest, but she knew keeping it might be impossible. The question was whether she could hold on long enough to have her baby, recover, and plan a future. A good worker could fix the worst damage, maybe mend the fences and patch the barn roof before winter. It wouldn't save the ranch, but it might mean the difference between losing everything and having a little to start over. "I could offer a room, food, and $50 a month," Sadie said, thinking it through. "More if we get some cows back and make money. But that's probably dreaming." Martha nodded. "That's fair for a guy who needs a place to stay. You'd be helping him as much as he's helping you. Some of those men at the auction are good folks who've just had bad luck. Veterans mostly who came back from war and couldn't find their place. The war. Everything seemed to come back to that. Thomas was too old to fight, but lots of younger guys from the valley went to places with hard-to-say names. Some came back different, struggling to fit into a world that moved on without them. Others never came back, leaving families waiting for news that never arrived. "There's a difference between taking a chance and being foolish," Sadie said, mostly to herself. "I'd need to be careful, especially with a baby coming." "Of course," Martha said. "You'd talk to them first, check if they have references, use your good sense. You've always been good at reading people, Sadie Mae." Outside, a meadowlark sang from the tall grass, its song sweet and clear. It was the sound of home, of mornings spent with Thomas planning their days and dreaming of kids and a legacy. Now Thomas was gone, the future was shaky, and the legacy was slipping away with every unpaid bill. But the meadowlark still sang and the baby kept growing strong. Somewhere in town there might be a man desperate enough to work for almost nothing, who could help her hold on a little longer. "The auction's tomorrow," Martha said softly. "If you're doing this, we should get ready." Sadie nodded, her choice clear because there were no others. "I guess we should." Saturday morning in Willeridge smelled like dust and desperation, mixed with coffee and bacon from the diner across from the courthouse square. Sadie sat in Martha's old Ford truck, hands on her belly, watching people gather around a simple wooden platform used for the town's auction. It was just a few planks raised 3 feet off the ground, but it had seen all kinds of sales. Cows, farm tools, and now people trading their work for survival. The men waiting to be auctioned stood together, holding worn bags or cardboard suitcases tied with rope. Some were young, barely out of their teens, with empty eyes like they'd grown up too fast in a world that didn't want them. Others had gray hair and faces lined from lives that used to be steady before everything fell apart. "You don't have to do this," Martha said from the driver's seat, her voice gentle but supportive. "We could go home and find another way." But they both knew there was no other way. The bank payment loomed like a storm cloud, and time was running out fast. Sadie pressed her hand against the truck window, feeling the cool glass, and looked at the men waiting to sell their work. That's when she saw him. He stood a bit apart, not in a showy way, but like someone used to watching instead of being watched. While others fidgeted or stared at the ground, he stood still, his gray eyes scanning the crowd with a calm that showed he'd learned discipline in tough places. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with a lean body that looked like he'd worked hard but hadn't always had enough to eat. His dark hair was short, like a soldier's, though it was growing out a bit. A thick mustache framed a mouth that didn't seem to smile, and his hands had calluses and small scars from working with tools. But his eyes caught Sadie's attention most. Gray-green, like storm clouds, full of pain he kept hidden, but also a kindness that hadn't been broken by whatever brought him here. "That one," Sadie said quietly, nodding toward the tall stranger. "The one by himself." Martha looked and nodded slowly. "He looks strong enough. Probably a soldier, maybe served overseas." The auctioneer, a chubby man named Bill Hutchkins who usually sold cows, climbed onto the platform and called for quiet. His voice carried across the square, clear and practiced, even though this auction felt wrong. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got 15 good men looking for work today. Room, food, and whatever pay you can offer for their labor. Let's start with young Jimmy Morrison." The auction moved fast, with a harshness born of need, not cruelty. Men stepped up, their skills listed like they were animals for sale, and people shouted bids. Some went for $200 a month plus room and food, others for less than half. Sadie watched, feeling uneasy, wondering if she was making a huge mistake by joining something that felt almost like buying people. She knew these men chose to be here. They needed work, and she needed help, but it still felt wrong. When the tall stranger's turn came, the auctioneer checked a paper. Next up, Colt Avery, 32 years old, served 2 tours in the Pacific, knows livestock, fixing machines, and ranch work. References if you want them. Colt stepped onto the platform, calm and steady, his eyes scanning the crowd without focusing on anyone. He didn't talk or smile, just stood there, solid and reliable. "We'll start at $100 a month plus room and board," Hutchkins said. A few hands went up, then more as people saw Colt's strength. The price climbed, 120, 150, 175. Sadie's heart sank as the bids went higher than she could pay. She'd hoped to find someone good she could afford, but the best men were too expensive. At $200, most bidders dropped out, leaving just Jake Patterson, who owned the biggest ranch in the valley and treated his workers fairly, and a fancy-looking man Sadie didn't know. $225, Patterson called. $250, said the stranger. $275, $300. The bids stopped and Patterson hesitated. $300 was a lot, enough to hire 2 less skilled men. After a long pause, he shook his head. "Going once at $300, Hutchkins called. "Going twice." $50, Sadie said suddenly, her voice clear across the square. Everyone went quiet, and she heard the wind whistle through the trees and distant cows mooing. All eyes turned to her, and her cheeks burned as she realized how silly her bid sounded compared to $300. Hutchkins coughed, confused. "Ma'am, I think you misheard. The bid's $300. "I heard right," Sadie said, standing awkwardly from the truck. "I'm offering $50 a month plus room and food and a share of any profits if we can make the ranch work again." The crowd murmured. Some laughed, some felt sorry for her. The fancy stranger looked at her with a sneer and turned away. But Colt's stormy eyes met hers, and for a moment, it felt like he could see right into her heart. "Ma'am," Hutchkins said kindly, "that's a nice offer, but this man bid $300 cash. What happens when his work's done?" Sadie kept her eyes on Colt. "Where does he go then?" "I'm offering steady work through winter. A chance to be part of something, not just hired help." The stranger snorted. $325, let's end this nonsense." But Colt spoke, his voice low and rough but strong. "I'll take the lady's offer." The crowd buzzed, but Hutchkins banged his gavel. "Hold on, Colt, you can't pick your boss. This is an auction, and the highest bidder can go to hell," Colt said calmly, stepping off the platform. "I came to find work, not to be sold like a cow. The lady's offer works for me, and I'm taking it." The stranger's face turned red. "You can't do that." "I bid fair." "You bid for a thing," Colt said, grabbing his bag. "I'm a man, not a cow, and I choose where I work." He walked toward Sadie, his eyes locked on hers. She saw lines around his eyes from sleepless nights, shoulders heavy from carrying burdens alone, but also something like relief. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat like an old-fashioned gentleman. "Colt Avery. I think we've got a deal." Sadie looked up at him, feeling his calm presence in the noisy square. "Sadie Mae Carver?" "Yes, Mr. Avery, we do." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, with Colt sitting in the truck bed by choice, his bag beside him, watching the land like he was memorizing it. Sadie peeked at him through the rear window, noticing how he studied every fence and building they passed. When they reached the ranch, Colt jumped out before the truck stopped, moving with purpose. He stood, hands on hips, looking over the sagging barn roof, broken fences, and empty pastures, his face hard to read. Sadie watched him, feeling embarrassed at how run down the place was. "It's not much now," she said, climbing down with Martha's help. "But it used to be special. Could be again with the right work." Colt nodded, his eyes moving from the house to the barn and back. "It's got good bones. Solid foundation, strong frame. The rest is just stuff that hasn't been fixed in a while." His voice held no blame. Just a practical take from someone who knew sometimes you let things slide to survive. Sadie relaxed a bit at his calm acceptance. "Martha will show you the bunkhouse," she said. "It's not fancy, but it's clean and dry. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6. But we can change that if you're working late." "Appreciate it, ma'am," Colt said, grabbing his bag and following Martha to the small building where workers used to stay when the ranch could afford them. "I'll settle in and look around if that's okay." "That's fine," Sadie said. An hour later, she was on the porch when Colt came out of the bunkhouse with a worn tool roll, dressed in patched dungarees and a flannel shirt, clean but well used. His boots were good leather, worn but cared for. "Mind if I ask what's the biggest problem?" he said, setting his hat on and looking at her with steady gray eyes. Sadie thought about all the urgent issues. "The water pump's been acting up and winter's coming. If we lose water to the house and barn, we're in trouble." Colt nodded and headed to the creek without another word. Sadie watched him move over the rough ground, steady like a soldier ready for anything. From the porch, she saw him check the pump, his hands moving like he'd done it 100 times. After 10 minutes, he went to the barn and came back with a wrench and spare parts Thomas had left for repairs that never happened. The baby kicked hard, making Sadie gasp and touch her side. She rubbed the spot, whispering soft words to calm the baby, or maybe herself. "You picked a good one," Martha said, stepping out with 2 glasses of sweet tea. "He's been at that pump an hour, and it already sounds better." Sadie took the tea, noticing Martha was right. The pump's struggling noise was now a steady hum, like it was supposed to sound. "He knows what he's doing," Sadie said. "More than that, he works like he cares about doing it right. That's rare." They watched Colt work, focused like nothing else mattered. When he finished, his shirt was greasy, hands dirty, but he looked almost satisfied. He walked back, stopping at the porch steps. "Pump's fixed," he said. "Loose part and a clogged screen. Should work fine through winter if you keep it clear." "Thank you," Sadie said, feeling huge relief. "What do I owe for parts?" "Nothing. They were already here, just needed putting in." He looked around, eyeing other jobs. "If it's okay, I'd like to fix the barn roof next. Weather says rain's coming, and those holes will get worse." "Sure, whatever you think is most important," Sadie said. He nodded, then paused, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. "Found this in my gear. Thought you'd want to see it." Sadie took it, unfolding a faded photo. It showed a young man in a soldier's uniform next to a woman with kind eyes, and a little girl, maybe 4, with pigtails and a big smile. They looked happy, caught in a perfect moment. The man was clearly Colt, younger and happier than now. "Your family?" Sadie asked softly, sensing the answer from his closed-off look. "Was," he said, his voice full of pain. "Car crash 3 years ago. Drunk driver in San Francisco." The simple words hit hard. Sadie looked at the little girl's smile, thinking of her own baby, and felt tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Colt took the photo back, folding it carefully. "Thought you should know who you hired. Some folks don't like bad luck around." "Bad luck?" Sadie said, surprised by his bitter tone. "Mr. Avery, losing people you love isn't bad luck. It's awful, but it doesn't make you cursed." His eyes flickered, maybe with hope, but it was gone fast. "I'll start on the roof," he said, heading to the barn where tools waited. 2 weeks into September, fall brought cool mornings and hints of colorful leaves. Colt settled into a routine, working from sunrise to sunset on the ranch's endless repairs. His steady hammering and sawing filled the quiet that had been missing too long. The barn roof was fixed, the pump hummed happily, and smaller jobs were done with care that showed real skill. But one morning, Sadie found him at the kitchen table with papers spread out, and she realized there was more to Colt than fixing things. "Morning," she said, pausing in the doorway, one hand on her aching back. The baby felt heavier every day. "Morning, ma'am," Colt said, starting to stand, but she waved him down. "Martha said you wouldn't mind me using the table." Sadie looked closer, seeing bills and legal papers she recognized as her own mess. Her cheeks burned, embarrassed that her troubles were out in the open, but she stayed calm. "No point pretending things aren't bad," she said, sitting across from him. "But I'm not sure what you can do that I haven't tried." Colt picked up a bank statement, his eyes scanning the numbers like he understood them. "Mind if I ask how the debt got so big?" Sadie sighed, the story heavy. "Thomas got sick 2 winters ago. Started as a cold, turned into pneumonia that wouldn't go away. Doctor bills, hospital stays, specialists. It added up fast. Then when he died, funeral costs, legal fees, taxes we didn't know about. By the time I saw how bad it was, I couldn't catch up. The ranch wasn't making enough to pay regular bills, let alone debt. Colt nodded, tapping the table like he was thinking hard. What's the ranch worth if you sold it? Bank said $45,000 last spring, but with the drought and low cattle prices, maybe $35,000 now, if we're lucky. And you owe $18,000 on the mortgage. Plus fees and interest, $22,000 total. He studied the papers, his face showing something like hope. What if you didn't have to sell? Sadie's heart hurt at the question she'd asked herself 1,000 times. I'd find a way to keep it. But wishing doesn't fix math, Mr. Avery. I don't have $22,000. Maybe you do, he said, his quiet confidence making her look closer. He grabbed a pencil and started writing numbers in neat handwriting. How many cows did this place have at its best? About 300, but we sold most to pay bills and the drought took others. We've got maybe 40 now, half too old or sick to be worth much. 300 cows, Colt wrote, his numbers lining up. At today's prices, that's about $70,000. Even losing 10% to sickness or accidents, that's $63,000. Sadie laughed bitterly. I don't have money to buy 300 cows. I can barely feed the ones I've got. What if you didn't have to buy them? His question made her lean forward, caught by his serious tone. Ranchers in eastern Montana are overstocked. The drought's worse there, and they want to move cows to better fields. Some would let you keep their cows here for winter if you share the profits from their growth and breeding. The idea was so simple, Sadie felt silly for not thinking of it. You think they'd trust a failing ranch? They'd trust good fields and someone who knows what they're doing, Colt said, looking at her. The question is, are you willing to risk what you've got to save it all? Sadie touched her belly, feeling the baby move, and thought about Thomas's wedding ring she still wore. How risky is it? If it works, you save the ranch and maybe make money. If it doesn't, you lose what you were going to lose anyway, just sooner. It was a big gamble, but the first real hope in months. And Colt seemed to know both the numbers and the risks. You'd help me set this up? She asked. Yes, ma'am, if you want me to. Sadie looked at her ring, catching the morning light, and decided. Then let's do it. October came with cold air, turning the cottonwoods by the creek into bright gold and amber, their leaves dancing in the breeze like a party. The ranch started to look better, with new fence posts standing straight, the barn freshly painted, and the sound of cows mooing in the pastures again. Colt's plan worked better than Sadie hoped. 3 ranchers from dry eastern counties sent their cows to her ranch for winter, bringing the herd to over 200. The animals were healthy, filling the fields with life that reminded Sadie of the ranch's good days. But Colt himself changed the most. The quiet, grim guy from the auction was now more open, more here. He still carried his pain, but sometimes she saw hints of who he used to be before his loss. Those hints came most in the evenings, when work was done, and they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Martha went to bed early, pretending to be tired, but really playing matchmaker. Alone, Sadie and Colt started talking, small stuff at first, then deeper as they trusted each other more. One evening, Sadie went inside for water, moving carefully as the baby pressed on her spine. When she came back, Colt held a bundle of letters tied with string, staring at the top one's address with a faraway look. Sorry, he said, starting to put them away when he saw her. Didn't mean to bring my stuff to your porch. You don't have to say sorry for having a life, Sadie said, settling into the rocking chair. You don't have to share either, if you don't want to. Colt was quiet, the letters on his knee like a big question. In the sunset's glow, his face showed years of hard weather, but also something softer. They're from Elena, he said. My sister-in-law, my wife's sister. The words carried a lot Sadie could only guess at. She waited, knowing pushing would make him shut down. She writes every month, Colt said, his voice soft. Started after the funeral. Family news, gossip, stuff like that. I guess she thinks it helps. Does it? Sadie asked. His laugh was sharp, no humor in it. Makes it harder to forget. Easier to remember what I lost. Sadie rocked, the chair creaking like always. Maybe forgetting's not the point. Maybe not. He turned the letters over, fingers tracing the writing. Elena thinks I should go back to California. Says the family needs me, that hiding here won't bring them back. Is that what you're doing? Hiding? The question hung like a dare. Colt was quiet, then spoke with the weight of someone who'd asked himself that too long. I don't know, maybe. Being in the house we lived in, driving the streets where it happened, it felt like drowning. Every place held a memory. Sadie thought about her own memories. Thomas in the rocking chair, the barn, their bedroom. It was love and pain mixed together, something she couldn't escape. Sometimes memories are all we have left, she said. They keep the people we love alive in our hearts, but sometimes they stop us from living too. Colt looked at her, really looked like he saw something new. You think I'm not living? Sadie touched her belly, feeling the baby wiggle. I think you're trying, but you're scared to let go of the past enough to grab the future. Her words stung because they were true for her too. She wore Thomas's ring like armor, held on to routines that kept him close. But she was building something new, wasn't she? Planning for the baby, saving the ranch, trusting Colt. Is that what you're doing here? She asked. Grabbing the future? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, maybe I am. For the first time in 3 years, I'm thinking about what's next, not what I lost. His words felt like a spark. Dangerous, but needed. Sadie looked at him, seeing his strong jaw, gentle hands on the letters, and quiet strength. The baby's coming soon, she said, not sure why. I know, things will change. Our routine, everything. He nodded, eyes on hers. You worried about that? Sadie thought, feeling the deeper question. Was she worried about the baby changing things, or about how her heart raced when Colt smiled, how safe she felt with him, how she was starting to feel more than friendship? I'm worried about a lot, she admitted, but not about you being here when the baby comes. That's the one thing I'm not worried about. His smile was small, but lit up his face, bringing light to his eyes. Good, he said, because I'm not going anywhere. The first snow came early, dusting the valley white, making everything look magical. Sadie watched Colt from the kitchen window, checking water troughs and breaking ice. Even from far away, she saw how confidently he moved among the cows, how they trusted him. 8.5 months pregnant, Sadie felt every step, every breath. The baby had dropped lower, a sign it was coming soon. The doctor told her to stay near town, but the ranch needed her, and Colt couldn't do it all alone. You should rest, Martha said, appearing with tea and a stern look. Standing all day won't help that baby come easier. The baby will come when it's ready, Sadie said, taking the tea. Until then, there's work. Through the window, she saw Colt pause by the water tank, his stillness meaning he'd found a problem. She was still learning his moods, still surprised by his knowledge. He's a good man, Martha said, watching too. Better than I thought when you brought him home. He is, Sadie agreed, though it didn't capture how much Colt meant. Partner, friend, and something more she was just starting to admit. Question is, Martha said, blunt as always, what are you going to do about it? About what? Don't play shy, Sadie Mae. I see how you look at him and how he looks at you. That man's falling in love, and so are you. Sadie's cheeks warmed, knowing Martha was right. Her feelings for Colt had grown from thanks to friendship to something deeper. He was patient, thoughtful, gentle in ways that made her heart ache. It's not that simple, she said. Love never is, Martha replied. Before Sadie could answer, they heard Colt's boots and knock. Martha opened the door and Colt came in, his face serious. What's wrong? Sadie asked, setting down her tea. Storm's coming, Colt said, grabbing the weather radio. Big one, 2 feet of snow, winds up to 60 miles an hour. Sadie's stomach tightened. A storm that big could kill the cows, especially the ones they were boarding. Losing them would ruin her ranch and reputation. How long? She asked. 12 hours, maybe 14. Colt was already putting on his coat. I need to move the cows to shelter and make sure we have feed. I'll help, Sadie said, but knew she couldn't. No, you won't, Colt said firmly, his eyes intense. Stay inside where it's safe. I can't work if I'm worried about you and the baby. His words carried care, not just orders. He wasn't just keeping her safe. He was scared of losing someone else he cared about. Okay, Sadie said, but check in every couple hours. If you need help, get me no matter what. Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe gratitude. I will, he promised. He paused at the door, looking back like he wanted to say more, but just tipped his hat. Take care, Sadie Mae. Then he was gone, leaving her with the growing feeling that the storm would test more than their ranch. It would test them. The storm hit hard, turning the valley into a wild mess of wind and snow. Sadie sat by the window, trying to see Colt through the blizzard, her worry growing with every hour he didn't come back. The cows were in sheltered spots, but keeping them fed and watered was tough. Martha kept busy in the kitchen, making food to reheat when Colt returned, her worry showing in her quick movements. They didn't talk much, but their shared fear connected them. Near midnight, they heard Colt's knock. Martha opened the door and Colt came in, covered in snow and ice, moving like he was exhausted. Coffee, he said, and Martha got it fast while Sadie stood, scared by his pale face and shaking hands. The cows? She asked. Safe, fed, watered, with enough hay for tomorrow if the storm keeps up, he said, holding the warm mug. Lost 2, but that's better than I thought. The loss hurt, but it wasn't the disaster it could have been. Sadie relaxed a bit. You need food and rest, Martha said. This storm's not done, and you're no good if you collapse. Colt nodded, but as he reached for his gloves, papers fell from his pocket. Official-looking documents that survived the storm. One landed face up, and Sadie saw a law firm's letterhead from California. Colt, she said, her voice questioning as he froze, picking up the papers. What are those? He stayed crouched, looking resigned, guilty, maybe relieved. When he stood, his eyes met hers with honest clarity. Legal papers, he said. About this ranch. The words hit like a punch. What about this ranch? Colt set the papers on the table carefully. My name's Colt Alexander Avery. 3 years ago, I owned a huge cattle ranch in California, 15,000 acres. Top livestock, a house my family had for generations. Sadie's face went pale, and Martha froze, both realizing what this meant. After the accident, after I lost Mary and Sarah, I couldn't stay, Colt went on. Everything reminded me of what I'd lost. So I gave it all away, to charities, family, keeping just enough to live on. Sadie's voice shook. You gave it away? He nodded at the papers. These are about the last of my money, put into a trust to help struggling ranch families. The room spun as Sadie tried to understand. The quiet man she hired for $50 a month had been one of California's richest ranchers. You lied to me, she said, confused more than angry. I didn't lie about who I am, Colt said. I'm the guy you met at the auction. Someone who lost everything that mattered. The money, the land, that wasn't me anymore. But you could have saved the ranch, Sadie said, realizing the truth. Paid the debt, fixed everything, made it profitable. Instead, you let me struggle, let me think I'd lose it all. It wouldn't have been yours. Colt cut in, his voice strong. It'd be mine or the bank's or some stranger's. Not the place your husband built, not your child's future. Sadie stared, trying to match the man she knew with this secret. So what are these papers? What's the trust got to do with my ranch? Colt unfolded the top paper, hands shaking slightly. Your ranch is the first to get help from the fund. As of yesterday, your mortgage is paid off. The ranch is yours, free, with money to keep it going for years. Silence filled the room, broken only by the storm outside and the clock ticking. The baby moved, feeling Sadie's emotions. You had no right, she whispered, tears falling from gratitude, betrayal, or both. I wanted to save it myself. I know, Colt said. Why, she asked. Why give up everything, then give more to a stranger? His eyes locked on hers, full of truth. Because you gave me something I thought I'd lost. You gave me a reason to care about tomorrow, and because, somewhere along the way, you stopped being a stranger. You became the most important thing in my world. His words built a bridge neither was ready to cross. Outside, the storm roared, full of new possibilities. The storm passed by morning, leaving 2 feet of snow sparkling in the sunlight. But inside, tension hung heavy after Colt's news. Sadie barely slept, her mind racing. The ranch was safe, better than safe. It could thrive now. But her trust in Colt felt wobbly, knowing he'd hidden his strength. She found him in the barn at dawn, moving among the cows with the same skill as always, but looking tired, like he was ready for whatever came next. The cows crowded around him, trusting him, and Sadie saw how naturally he protected them. How are the losses? She asked, stepping through snow in the barn. Better than expected, Colt said, checking a water trough for ice. The 2 we lost were old, wouldn't have made winter anyway. The rest are fine. Talking about work felt odd after last night, but it was their safe space. I've been thinking about what you said, Sadie began, her breath visible in the cold. About the trust fund, why you did it. I get it and why you didn't tell me. But I need you to know what this means for me, for us. Colt turned, his eyes searching hers. What does it mean? Sadie stepped closer, seeing his tired eyes and tense shoulders. It means I don't know what's real. The man I hired, our partnership, the feelings between us, were they real? Or were you playing a game, helping a poor widow? None of it was a game, Colt said, his voice clear. Every day I worked, every talk we had, every moment, that was real. The money doesn't change that, doesn't it? You could have bought this place 10 times over, hired experts, made it perfect. Instead, you worked with me, watching me struggle when you could have fixed it with one call. Colt looked at the snowy fields where cows were stepping out cautiously. After the accident, after losing Mary and Sarah, I thought about giving up. Everything. I couldn't see why I should keep going when my mistakes cost them their lives. Sadie felt his pain like a hit, realizing how deep his hurt ran. What stopped you? Time, mostly, and seeing that ending it wouldn't bring them back or fix what I did. But I couldn't live with having so much when my carelessness took everything from them. His voice broke. The trust fund wasn't charity. It was me trying to make my life mean something. Sadie's eyes teared up as she saw he was giving her more than money, a chance to heal both their wounds. And then you found me, she said. I found a woman fighting to save something precious against huge odds. Someone who showed me there are things worth fighting for. His voice softened. Someone who made me hope again. Before Sadie could answer, a car engine roared outside, followed by urgent voices. Martha ran across the yard toward a black car that made it through the snow. Mrs. Carver, called Dr. Morrison. Colt was at Sadie's side, his hand on her back, steadying her as they walked out to meet the group. Dr. Morrison looked serious, and a man in a fancy coat with a badge stepped forward, looking official. Martha wrung her hands, worried. Doctor, what's wrong? Is it the baby? Sadie asked, heart racing. The baby's fine, as far as I know, Dr. Morrison said, his tone tense. But we've got a problem that needs attention now. The man in the coat spoke. Mrs. Carver, I'm Agent Harrison with the Department of Agriculture. We've got an issue with your cattle. Colt tensed, ready for trouble. What issue? Harrison checked a folder, his face blank but serious. We've had reports of sick animals here, foot and mouth disease in the cows you're boarding. The words hit Sadie hard. Foot and mouth was a rancher's worst fear. Contagious, ruinous, maybe requiring all the animals to be destroyed. That's impossible, Colt said firmly. I work with these cows daily. There's no sign of that or any disease. Still, Harrison said, we have to quarantine everything. No animals can leave, and vets will check them within 48 hours. Sadie's world spun. Even if the cows were healthy, the quarantine could ruin the boarding deals and her reputation. Who reported it? She asked, scared of the answer. I can't say, Harrison replied. But it's someone who knows your ranch and cows well. Then Sadie felt a sharp pain in her back, a tightening in her belly she'd ignored but couldn't now. She looked at Colt, seeing her fear in his eyes. The baby was coming. Now, just as everything else was falling apart. Doctor, she said, hand on her belly as another pain hit. I think you'll be needed for more than cows today. The next hours were a blur of chaos. Dr. Morrison took charge, guiding Sadie inside while telling Martha to prepare for a home birth. The contractions were fast and strong, showing the baby was coming quickly. Meanwhile, Agent Harrison set up in the barn, working with vets who somehow reached the ranch despite the snowy roads. Colt moved between Sadie and the barn, calm and efficient, like he'd handled emergencies before. How close are the contractions? Dr. Morrison asked, checking his watch as Sadie gripped the table through another pain. 3 minutes, Martha said, steady but worried. Been like that for an hour. Then we're doing this here, Dr. Morrison said. No time to get to the hospital. He looked at Colt, who'd just come in with snow on his boots. Help me get her upstairs. This baby's coming now. Colt helped Sadie up the stairs, gentle but strong. Easy, he said, like he was calming a scared animal. One step at a time. In the bedroom, Martha had set up everything. Sheets, water, towels, supplies. Like a mini hospital. Vets are checking the cows, Colt said, helping Sadie onto the bed. They'll work all night if needed. Another contraction hit, stronger, and Sadie grabbed Colt's hand. His fingers locked with hers, steady and warm. Who'd report us? She gasped when the pain eased. Who knows enough to make that kind of complaint? Colt's face darkened. Someone watching us who knows about the boarding and the cows. Someone who wants to hurt us bad. Another contraction came, huge, and everything else faded. Dr. Morrison worked fast, checking her and giving Martha orders. Outside, the vet's work continued. Cars arriving, people shouting, cows mooing. The mix of the bedroom's life-giving moment and the barn's crisis felt unreal. I see the head, Dr. Morrison said, excited. A couple more pushes. Sadie felt a burst of strength, like everyone's hopes were pushing her. Colt's hand was her anchor. Thomas's firefighting gear, she said suddenly, a clear thought in the chaos. In the barn loft. If someone's sabotaging us, they might burn it to hide evidence. Colt's grip tightened, understanding. Thomas's gear was stored with supplies that could be key if someone attacked the ranch. I'll check, he started, but Dr. Morrison called for one last push. Sadie focused, pulling strength from somewhere deep. Then a baby's cry filled the room, sharp and new. It's a girl, Dr. Morrison said, smiling. And she's beautiful. Sadie looked at Colt through tears, seeing her joy in his eyes. This moment was theirs, no matter what came next. The baby's cry echoed like hope, cutting through the tension. Sadie held her daughter, amazed by her tiny fingers and bright eyes. After months of worry, holding her was overwhelming. She's perfect, Martha whispered, tears on her cheeks as she looked at the new family member. Absolutely perfect. Dr. Morrison finished checking. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, healthy as can be. She's strong like her mom, Colt stood back, his face full of awe and tenderness. Their eyes met, and Sadie felt everything shift. This baby made them a family in a way that went beyond logic. But shouts from outside broke the moment, and smoke's sharp smell sent fear through them. "Fire!" someone yelled, and an orange glow lit the window. Colt moved fast, his training kicking in. "The barn," he said, grim. Someone set it on fire. The barn held the cows, Thomas's gear, and hay that would burn fast. Losing it could mean losing everything. "Save them," Sadie pleaded. "The cows, the gear, everything." "I will," Colt said, his voice sure. "Stay here with the baby. Keep her safe." He leaned down, kissing Sadie's forehead and the baby's head gently. "I love you both," he said, then ran out into the night where the fire glowed fiercely. Sadie watched from the window as Colt raced to the barn, moving like he'd faced danger before. The vets and agents were trying to move Ev's system, move the cows, but the fire was spreading too fast. Colt ran into the barn, heading for the loft where Thomas's firefighting gear was stored. Sadie's heart stopped. He was risking his life to save it. "He's going for the equipment," Martha said, scared. "That fool's going to get himself killed." But Sadie knew why. He was fighting for more than the barn, for love and loyalty. Minutes felt like hours. Colt came out with the gear, leading the fight against the flames with the others. Slowly, they pushed the fire back, working all night. By dawn, the barn was damaged but standing, the cows safe and Colt alive, covered in soot. "He did it," Sadie whispered, looking at her baby, then at Colt, who'd risked everything for them. 6 months later, spring brought green pastures and new life to the valley. The ranch showed scars of winter, but also hope. New fences, a rebuilt barn, thriving fields. Sadie stood on the porch, baby Rose asleep in her arms, watching Colt teach young ranchers his skills. The boarding business had grown despite the false disease report from a jealous rival, now facing charges. The morning was warm, the screen door open, Rose's soft breaths mixing with ranch sounds. Martha brought coffee, sitting in Thomas's old rocking chair. "That man of yours is getting famous," she said, nodding at Colt teaching a group. 3 more ranchers want to send their sons to learn from him. Sadie smiled, watching Colt's patient teaching, like Thomas used to do. The comparison didn't hurt as much now. Thomas was her foundation, but loving Colt didn't mean forgetting him. Rose stirred, showing signs of the Carver family's strong will and Colt's calm nature. "Have you set a date?" Martha asked, smiling. Sadie blushed. "October," she said, adjusting Rose. "The anniversary of when we met. Hard to believe so much changed in a year," Martha said. Sadie looked at Colt, their smiles sharing everything they'd built. He waved and she waved back, the young men watching with respect. "He's coming over," Martha said, grabbing the cups and leaving. Colt walked up, his boots clean, sleeves rolled up, looking at Sadie and Rose with love. "How are my girls?" he asked, his voice warm. "Perfect," Sadie said, meaning it. A new family photo sat on the mantel. Sadie, Colt, and Rose, happy, next to old pictures of the ranch's history. Love had grown, adding to the past without erasing it. As Colt joined them, Sadie felt ready for the future, built from their shared strength.